being 7 p.m., I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Thursday, October 21st, 7 p.m. Note that this meeting is being recorded for live broadcast and televised replay by Bourne TV. If anyone is audio or visual recording, they need to acknowledge it at this time. Kim Johnson, thank you. Note any excused or absent members. Kate Jones is excused this evening. Is there any public comment regarding non-agenda items? Seeing none. Is there any FY22 reserve fund transfers?
No reserve fund transfers.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
All right, the select board like to,
We have to call the joint meeting, the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Members present are Peter Meyer, George Slade, MJ Mastrangelo. Members excused are Jared McDonald and Judith Furman.
thank you. First up this evening is Article number 12, CPA Capital Projects.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Selectmen Finance Committee, Glenn and Tim, and Erica and Mike, and everybody else in the room. I'm Barry Johnson. I happen to be the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee. The other night when I was here, I took note of the fact that the Finance Committee may have a few new folks, new appointees to your committee. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I just want to make 3 comments. Anybody wants to find out the Community Preservation Act and our enabling legislation is Chapter 44B of the Mass General Laws, as well as Article 8 of the Town Bylaws. Our funds are generated through the 3% surcharge on everyone's real estate tax bill, and it can only be used for 4 categories: open space, historic preservation or restoration of various items, community housing, and recreation. And the unique thing in the law is that if there are 9 of us on the committee, 4 of us representing open space, 1 from the housing, 1 from recreation, 1 from the planning board, and 1 for the Conservation Commission. So if the 5 of us as a majority if we take a vote and the majority of the 9 vote not to recommend this project, that's the one quirk in the law. No matter how much everybody wants it, how far you want to take it, it cannot go before town meeting for even be considered. With that end, that's my opening remarks. So I know we have some folks here that have other commitments. So with your permission, may I go through the list and ask these folks to come up and address everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay. The first one I'd like to take up is Recreation Director Chris-Ann Karen. I think she's here. Yeah. Chris-Ann. And Katie.
I touch it. It's okay.
And before Chris-Ann starts, I will tell you on each application, the committee is recommending this application that's before you.
Good evening. Before you, you have a request for $70,000 for engineering and design services for the outdoor recreation area behind the community building. It's an underutilized area. It's long overdue for an overhaul, and we want to create an area that people want to come to. Areas of concern for us currently are the skate park, which is in dire need of a complete overhaul. The Comoletti Memorial Basketball Court has a lot of cracks in it and can no longer temporarily be repaired. We have money already that Community Preservation and Town Meeting had allocated for new playground. We have not put that in. We didn't want to put anything in and then get a designer in here and kind of mess up any future plans we might have. The area back here, we want to create an outdoor version of the community center. We have a great community center where we have children and families and seniors. And we want to create that outdoors as well. We have some underutilized areas where we feel like we could put in a couple of dedicated pickleball courts, possibly a tennis court, but we won't really know until we get an engineer or a designer in here to do it. Like Katie and I can look at it, and we've walked it 100 times, and we've said, oh, we think that we can fit this in and that in, but we really need to have a professional come in and map this out for us, and then help us formulate a plan going forward to actually get the work done. So this is obviously the first step, is to secure funding to bring in an expert in this area, of which there are many out there, and then hopefully put forward next year a multi-phase plan to actually renovate the property out back.
Any questions from the committee? Board of Selectmen? MJ?
In the process that you envision for the design and engineering, are you gonna get public input, or is there gonna be ways?
Yes.
And one of the reasons I asked this is I had a number of people talk to me about the skate park when I was running for the board of selectmen.
So part of the RFQ is written, and we just need to take one more final look, and it will go out after town meeting if we do get the funding. In the RFQ, we have that the firm selected will hold a minimum of 2 public hearings, and that will be just for the overall property. Once we get that final plan, when we get down into the nitty-gritty to go forward for the funding for the actual project, then we bring in the skate park company, and then we have a public input session for everyone who utilizes the skate park to come in and give input as to what they would want to see. You know, and we take those different areas and we put them all together with the experts and the users within that group. So absolutely, we would never want to do a project like this without public input.
That sounds
Yeah.
that sounds like a really good process, so thank you very much for explaining.
Actually, through the chair. What happens, you know, your plan out back behind here, you're gonna end up taking away a ball field. Do you have any plans to replace it?
There's an underutilized field in Sagamore Beach at the Hoxie School, which is the same dimensions as this field that we have here. If that were not a viable option, which it is a viable option, to just relocate anything that goes here, could be relocated down there. It's a lot easier to find a home for a new ball field than it is to find a home for a skate park, or particularly pickleball courts. Those are activities that are a little louder. You can't kind of plop them, you know, into the middle of a neighborhood like you can a ball field. But the Hoxie field, we don't have anyone that has been permitted on that in the last several years, so that is a viable option.
The reason I ask is maybe, I would hope that Little League and Babe Ruth and the other baseball organizations had input before this is eliminated. I mean,
Yeah, and there's
because,
no saying that both fields will be eliminated, but we would definitely solicit input from baseball. But again, we have a field that is very underutilized in a different part of town. So we would hate to, you know, not utilize an area here that is more central for other things that could be used more. If we have an option to move them, we would be looking to move them.
I'll wait, I'll reserve comment. Thank you.
Another comment, if I might.
Go ahead.
Okay. And that is that when we had our discussion with Chris Ann and Katie about this project, that it's clear that, and everybody understands that they will be the lead folks, et cetera, on this project. But also, we asked, and they did, was to go before the Recreation Committee for their input onto it too. And they did that, and the Recreation Committee also is recommending this project.
Thank you. Bill?
Yes, please. Thank you. If you're looking at the ball field at the Hoxie School, if you set up that as a field to replace here, is that going to impinge upon anything should the property, the Hoxie School property, be sold off? And would it impinge or impair the sale of that property by having that and make it, you know?
My understanding, and somebody in the room can correct me if I'm wrong, The actual Hoxie property is 2 parcels of land. So the parking lot in the school are one, and where the playground is in the field are another. And that was clearly defined, I believe, with the prior agreement made with the group that was looking at working on the Hoxie school. They are 2 parcels of property, so any sale would be for one, or if the town chose both. But it could be split, so that the building was sold off, but we retained the parcel that had the field on it.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can finish, and then,
Thank you. My concern would be that it might limit the buyers for that property if in fact they were next to a major facility such as that for activities going on. And that's, it's just something I think to consider while you're talking about all of this, you know, and that Hoxie School is still around
But,
for a while.
yeah, and, you know, we could decide that we can keep a ball field here and kind of limit other things that we're gonna put. You know, we have that option, but we need to get a professional in here to tell us and give us all of those options, to say, if you want to retain a ball field, here's what you're going to have to give up to do that. But this would give us the ability to have that conversation. And I don't know what's in the works for selling off of the Hoxie school, if that's, you know, I don't really know, but that's a valid point to consider for sure.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
put that in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave and then Rich.
Barry, just a quick question. How much do you have available in the CPA funds?
Okay. Again, I want to thank Erica and Mike for providing me with this information. Right now, because these funds are from the reserves, which have, been accounted for, so they're funds that are available. But, and that also, and when you go back and after voting in all of the projects that was voted at the annual town meeting for CPA, in the recreation open space line item, we have $892,656. But again, you'll notice all these funds are coming from reserves, or not future appropriations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my question was, following up on Bill's thing about Hoxie, would you envision that the Hoxie field, if this was to go forward, would be developed as part of the same project so that the field would be available and not just, yeah, we're gonna do that someday?
Yeah, and the DPW is a co-sponsor on this, so I don't make any decisions that would involve them without talking with them. And that field would need minimal work to get it up for T-ball use, which is what this field is currently used for. But the DPW could make sure, or we could allocate funds as part of the project to get that done if we wanted to do that instead.
Peter?
With the Hoxie School, yes, the ball field is a separate entity controlled by the school department. However, if we do go and do an RFP and they come back saying they want the rest of the property, then we may have to look at as a way of acquiring that property.
I
in
thought that
order-
they turned that over to us.
I believe is.
I schedule that field.
Even you now control, but I'm just saying, that property's not off the table for an RFP, in the future, so I don't wanna say that, at least in Sagamore Beach, you have Clarkfield, if that goes away, you have another place to go.
Right.
Here in Buzzards Bay, there is no more field if this goes away. And East Village has been pretty lucky for the most part about having their own ball field, and just to go and take it away like that, I mean, it's just, and it's.
But we can leave it on the table to say, give us a plan that leaves the ball field. Maybe it gets relocated on the property here, but we can certainly leave that on the table.
Amanda?
Sure, just a quick question. So if you did hypothetically use that parcel on Hoxie and retain the ball field, where would they park? Because I believe spots are limited on that section where the ball field is if you're selling off the other side.
We'd have to take I didn't know that selling that initial property was going to be up for discussion tonight. So I don't know. We'd have to take a look at that. They've always just parked along the street and in that parking lot. So if we sold off, I believe that the property line includes like one row I'm looking over here
I was gonna
for some help over here. I believe it includes that like first row of parking that's along the field, but, I mean, you're using it for practices and whatnot, so.
The assessor's map, if you look at it closely, Chrisanne is correct. If you're coming up Meeting House Lane Road and you take that right going into Hoxie, right there on that corner, it's labeled as a McDermott parcel. It's but it's right in that upper there. Secondly, there is the Don Lonigan Memorial is right there too, longtime principal of the Hoxie School. So all of these issues would be dealt with in the upcoming RFP.
MJ?
I was just gonna say, when we did the Cody School agreement, one of the things that we end up having to do was an easement for the parking so that they could meet the parking requirements, and it was done really after they had their plans and after the parking was determined, and so it's all part of the process of figuring out how you're gonna do what you're gonna do. So I think it's good to bring it up and have it all in our minds. It's something we have to think about, but I think there's ways to figure it out.
Yeah. And, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, just, it's my understanding that the majority of the parking next to the Hoxie School actually belongs to the ball field. Like Chris Ann's right, those are two separate parcels, and I think the line is 10 feet from the parking lot next to the Hoxie School, so.
Oh,
like
I thought it was the other way.
I think it's the other way, and I think,
Okay.
like I say, I think the majority of that parking lot actually belongs to the ball field. I mean, but again, like MJ just said, that'd be part of the negotiations. If we do sell it off, we have to look at the easements. There was an easement, I believe, for the prior lease, so we have to
Yes.
look where that stands, and make those accommodations. Honestly, I think for a Little League field, I'm gonna say there's plenty of parking there. Because this is a side lot also, right? I mean, I don't know how many cars go in there, but pretty big parking lot for a
Yeah,
Little League
how
field.
about the old basketball court and that small parking lot?
Yeah.
So this article, or your request, is for having an engineer look at this area.
Correct.
So the fate of the Hoxie School is
Down the
what
road.
it is down
Yeah.
the road, and you'll adjust to that, and you're gonna get public input on that.
Correct.
So it's good to think about, so thank you for bringing it up, and
Yeah.
thank you everyone for your questions.
Yeah, just
thank you.
a question, did you say something about one or both of those fields being designated for T-ball?
Currently, they use this one for T-ball, I believe, or minor league. The little kids play out here. So it doesn't need to be, they can be accommodated on the Hoxie field where they have played before.
But in any event, both sets of users would probably be
accommodated.
carted by car with
Mhm.
parents.
Yep,
and,
as they
just-
normally are
Right,
wherever. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions regarding this portion of the article? Seeing none. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next application that I'd like to ask them to come forward is Deborah Burgess from the Historic Commission, please. And she'll explain her request. I'd like to also let you know that, A, the CPC is recommending same, and also this application went before the Historic Commission, as it must, and they unanimously are recommending it also. And in anticipation of the question, again, it's future revenues, not for this particular article. In the historic line item, reserve, we have $231,822.73. Deborah?
Good evening. My name is Deborah Burgess. I am Secretary of the Bourne Historical Commission. And our application is for historical survey. It's a continuation of the town's community-wide survey of historic buildings and sites, which is mandated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts through the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Surveys are important to further document the history of Bourne. All surveys are listed on the Massachusetts Historical Commission's Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System website, or MACRIS. Surveys are used by the Historical Commission in its work to document the history of Bourne and are used by the town to recognize properties older than 75 years as required by the demolition delay bylaw. Although many parts of Bourne have been surveyed, there are areas which have not been surveyed. The proposed survey will cover some of these areas, including county and shore roads between Barlow's Landing Road and Clay Pond Road and Beach Street. This survey will allow approximately 100 more buildings and sites to be added to the town's survey. The survey recognizes properties by year built, type of architecture, construction, and events connected to that property and the families who lived there. Properties which may be eligible for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places are so noted.
Any questions from the committee regarding surveys for the Historic Society? Select Board?
I just might add that this is an ongoing project. I think you've seen these requested numerous times, and this is just an additional request to keep the project going forward for the historic resources of the town.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no questions or comments, you may continue.
Okay, everybody all set? Okay, thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next items that I'd like to bring up is the Community Housing Group. Sue Ross and Kerry Holman are here. They are going to be presenting the two applications regarding community housing projects. Again, the committee has had extensive meetings with them, and again, we are recommending it. And again, after this town meeting, and to go forward, because they've been extremely active, there's a balance of $18,841.01 for future appropriation. So again, the committee recommends both applications. Is Kerry or Sue, is Kerry going to speak? Okay, Kerry?
Yeah, Barry, I don't know which one you've got first there.
It's fine. Take the easy one, the 12-5.
The housing rehab, okay, I've got it right here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just very briefly, Bourne's relationship to housing rehab is 8 to 10 years old. We started out working with just the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have a grant program and a loan program. One of the things they do not fund or allow to be funded is the technical spec writing and overseeing that. That's not an eligible activity. So we started out with funding, using funding from CPA that we applied for. CPA can't pay for the construction, but they can pay for the technical assistance. So we've had a housing rehab specialist on board for a long time. They write the specs, oversee the bid process, make sure that the bids cover what need to be, and then when the project is done, they review it to make sure that the project was done according to the specs. We recently sent this out. This went to 12,000 households in the town of Bourne. From that, we've got a great deal of a response, particularly for the home repair program. We have had minimal amounts of money in home repair up until recently, we hope. And we used our program as a very detailed, small amount program where an emergency program. We wouldn't spend more than $5,000. So if a roof got torn up, if a heating system blew up, we could go and use that. Now, what's happened is, because of the response of this, we're sitting with 7 eligible applicants, all meeting the income criteria, all basically retired people that have houses that need work. We only have, each rehab specialist work, when they do the details, the specs, they oversee it, it's about a $2,000 bill. We have, I think, just under $10,000 left in this budget for that. So we've got 7, so we're already in the hole. If we're able to go, we'd have to stop before we got to the last few. But we're down to a point where if we do all 7 applicants, we'd be in the hole. So the timing of this fall meeting is really important to us. We didn't normally have this many applicants come in, but doing this mailing, that generated that. So the housing rehab specialist role is central to everything we do, whether it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture's programs or the funding that we have through the Community Development Block Grant. People are paying back loans that were made a number of years ago as they sell their houses. That money comes into the town. We were awarded $25,000 through the planner's office. We've been notified that there's about $100,000 left out there that we hope to be working with finance to get that so that we can use it for these 7 applicants that we have. So what this application does is it asks for, I believe, $12,500. That will allow us to keep going with that, with the services of the housing rehab specialist, who in this case happens to be an architect, and not only has the technical expertise, but does the same type of thing for the town of Westport that I do for the town of Bourne. He runs various types of programs for them, housing programs, so it's a great mix. So that's what we're asking for.
All right. Any questions from the committee?
So
Yes.
the $12,500 is to fund the technical expertise of the people who are assisting with the specifications for the housing rehab,
That's correct.
correct? Okay,
There's no construction money in here,
okay.
because we can't use CPA funds for that.
So this is architectural support?
Yes.
and- Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Select board?
How much do the flyers cost?
Yeah.
4,000.
Yeah, that's not cheap.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it wasn't, well, yeah, but it was, it's very, with all of the technology that's out there, it's virtually impossible to get the word out to people. Newspapers don't work, radio ads don't work. I'm not a Facebook expert, but that's our next round, but this was, that $4,000 was probably the most effective way we've advertised in the 10 years or so I've been here.
The second application, Kerry?
Do you want, okay,
It is for $20,000.
okay, yes. Okay, now,
Excuse me, we are recommending this one also. Excuse me.
okay, I just mentioned to you the housing rehab program. This second one is very critical for our ability to continue to do this. It's broken up into 2 parts, but the first is $10,000 for a consultant grant writer to write a community development block grant application for the town of Bourne. Historically, the town of Bourne, by doing this, the first time we did it was $8,000, I guess, to get somebody to write it. That turned around $950,000. That generated the ability to go for another $950,000. And then, because of regulations, the most that the town could get was $450,000. So that started with an $8,000 investment. There's no guarantees. Bourne is right on the cusp of the population income criteria that allows it to be eligible to get block grant money. There's the block grant money that's available now maxes out at $850,000. So what we're asking for in this technical assistance is for $10,000. I've checked with 2 of the 3 consultants that the state recommends. $10,000 should do the grant writing aspect of it. This would allow us to apply for $850,000 to, that $850,000, if awarded, would do 2 things. It probably would help in the tens of households with the home repair. But just as we expect to be using $100,000, it'll be, by the time we're done, $125,000 of payback money it'll create another resource for our continued rounds of payback money. So this is an ongoing fund. It's, somebody said, what is it, the grant that never keeps on giving? So the grants go out, when people sell their houses, they pay it back, or a portion of it back. That money goes into a fund that we're trying to now use with the U.S. Department of Agriculture money and the block grant payback money to continue doing these rehabs. Those 7 applicants that we're talking about, and that includes, in one case, a house that's settling into the ground that needs to be fixed quick, okay? So this is to rejuvenate that fund and to help some people. So the world of these grants is now at a point where you have to use a consultant. It's just too technical to try to do it with the local staff. So we're asking for that. The other 10 grand that's in this 20 would be for a variety of technical support resources. We know that in one of these units that we're talking about, these 7 units, we're gonna need a structural engineer. So that is over and above the typical rehab specialist work. I don't know how much money that is yet, because we're still trying to find a structural engineer to work on it. The Housing Partnership is committed to $6,000 to work with Calamar over here with the Tides Project, who have 12 rental units that will be deed restricted as affordable. But the partnership has been committed to pay for $6,000 towards the lottery process to identify those. So we've got that in there. So this is for a series of other technical services that we need outside our normal, we go under housing services budget. This is up and above that. Now, people have asked, why don't you just include it in your regular housing services budget? One of the reason is that we didn't know some of these things were coming beforehand, so that's one reason we didn't. But the other is that our budget, the housing services budget, ends with the fiscal year at June 30th. These projects are going to be ongoing. The grant writing that we were talking about won't be required to be submitted until September. However, there's a small chance that the state is going to ask for another submission this year. So we want to be ready for that, and there's a lot of work that goes into that grant writing. So both when it comes to the technical support and for the grant application and for the housing rehab specialist, having them budgeted as project budgets rather than administrative budgets allow us to continue past the end of this fiscal year.
Any questions from the committee? Select board?
I got one question. Barry, how much did you say was in the community housing reserves? You said 18,000. Is that before or after these
No,
projects?
that is what's left
After.
for future,
Okay, after these projects.
after this town meeting.
Is
Correct.
that, when you were, all the numbers you're giving, is that after you've spent what's in the article?
Right, that's all included. That would be if we had another town meeting.
Just making sure. Don't assume.
Any other
Good.
questions?
Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, thank you all for your time and
Thank you for that thorough explanation.
time you volunteer for the town. I know it, many people appreciate it, so thank you very much.
Okay, the next applicant, and we have 2 more, is Kathy Fox Alfano, Chairman of the Library Trustees. Is she behind me? Oh, good. This application, I want to, before Kathy gets started, we're recommending this application. We had extensive conversations with Kathy and the acting director, Ms. Finn, and the remaining members of the Board of Trustees, including Sean Feeney of the Facilities Director. Their original application, and Kathy will go through it, was for 400,000. And at the end of these conversations, the committee voted to recommend 150,000. And that is broken down in three ways. Number one, and Kathy will explain all this, and basically, the cupola on top of the library is back leaking again. We repaired it about 5 or 6 years ago. We put in extensive money. For sundry reasons, it is leaking, and Kathy will explain that further. The second part of it is we allocated about 50, more or less, in the budget for a new front door for the library. And she'll explain why. It's more vintage, and it's not working, and we got to make sure the ADA compliant. And then the remaining balance that they asked for, it was our recommendation, and they agreed at this point, that what the library should be doing is becoming part of the overall capital outlay program to replace the remaining windows within the library, which are needed very badly. We don't think that all CPA funds should be used for just repairing, all the windows, which are about 100, I guess, throughout the library. Just one other thing, and back to the cupola. There will be a little bit of window work there because, the eyebrow windows that are just underneath the cupola, that will be included in this particular thing. The other strong recommendation that we've made, and the trustees have agreed to, is that we're going to be engaging out of these funds a third-party person, a professional, to come in, look at it, and then make a spec and a recommendation, an architect, a structure, whatever is needed. And Sean will be overseeing that with the library trustees and Tim and Glenn and et cetera. Our role is just a funding source. So that's the reason you only see 150 versus the actual application of 400. So I hope I said it right, Kathy, so turn
Actually,
it right over to you.
I believe it totals 210.
That's 210, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Right, we upped it, sorry.
Did you,
Yeah, but wait a minute, I
do you
only
have
put in
pictures of
150.
the different things? No? No, it's too bad, because even at the library, pictures
Correct me, because
say 1,000 words.
well, please correct me, because I
Sure.
only asked for the 150.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 210.
All right, well, we'll discuss it, we'll go back at it. I think we have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Just real quick, Glenn?
I was gonna say the same thing. I think if I look at the draft article number 12, right, there could be
Oh,
some
right.
typos in here. There's
Oh.
150,000, right?
Right,
For essentially repairs to the roof, the cupola, and windows. And then there's a separate item, $50,000 for the front door. I
right.
don't know if we're off by $10,000 somewhere, but
I believe it was, we decided to do 60 for the front door.
Okay,
because
we
wanted
upped the
to
front
add in
door.
so
a
there's a typo
consultant.
on the front door.
I'm sorry. That's my error. You are correct. Because when we got into it, the ADA component upped it
Right, right.
to 210.
If you've been to the library, you'll see that the front door is actually a glass door that looks like something from the 70s or 80s, which is what it is from when they converted the library from a school to a library. That door is far from historically accurate. It's also leaking. In the winter, sometimes you can't even lock it because it buckles and whatever. And we have pictures. I hoped you have them. But if you look above the glass doors, there's a solid panel. That should come out. We want to put glass there and have a beautiful light so that when you're looking at the library at night, there's a light in the window. And we've been trying to talk to architects who have done the similar libraries. The library was actually designed by William McLean, and he has done many libraries in the Commonwealth, and they all have these double doors with a transom, and that's what we want to do. It'll be much more beautiful and effective, cost-effective as well as energy efficient. We also, as Barry said, we originally put in for all of the windows. There's almost 100 windows in the library. They are original. They are single-pane windows. They have broken sashes. You can't open some of them, which is a problem with COVID, and there's peeling, flaking lead paint. We really don't want that in the children's room. So that is why we're hoping that the capital outlay will help us with the windows. Also, the cupola, which had been looked at maybe a decade ago or so, is leaking again. And we don't know if it's the cupola itself or the windows or how the cupola was attached back to the roof, but a professional has to go up there and see what's going on. But there is 4 windows that are affected by that. When it rains, the water comes in. We used to have the room called the trustees' room, but it's upstairs, so we can't use that anymore. But there's flaking paint, there's all sorts of problems with that. So that's so the 2 things that we're looking for is to fix the roof, the leaks, those 4 windows in the front, and the front door. So in the beginning. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Point of clarification, under the section D, it was 150, and then section E, it was 50. So is section D now 210 plus the 50?
No, no,
Or
no,
that's
no,
included?
it totals 210.
Right.
Now, ease up from 50 to
It
60.
should have been 60,
50
that's
to
my
60.
error. I recorded 50.
10 grand on,
Yeah, so just for clarification, Part E is 60. The total is gonna be 557,500. And up in the motion, it's gonna be transfer 210,000 from historic preservation reserves.
No, if I might, I think I might have messed this up. The 150 still stays the same
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
cupola. It is the front door. I
what you
said
said.
50, I mean, no, is it 50? Yeah, 50, it should have read 60.
No, that's, yeah, and I was
Yeah,
clarifying that.
okay,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, I was just clarifying that,
Right.
the total, and then how much we're gonna
Right.
use from historic
So I
reserves.
apologize to the
It's okay.
committee and the selectmen.
Any further questions? Wayne?
Barry, just so I can understand, so when you have these
Okay.
funds, do you keep like a separate account for your different categories?
Yes.
Good. Oh, okay, so, 'cause
Oh,
I heard
yes.
you giving different numbers.
Yes, I can just show you that every month from finance, they do yeoman work for us, and they provide a readout by each project, what it is by the line item, et cetera, and the current balances. So it's an ongoing thing, because when the bills come in, I always, because I do the bills, but I will not sign off unless I see the architect or whoever that's authorized to sign. And then when I do it, I charge it to these numbers, and then it goes over to finance for payment.
So, just so that we understand the process, does your committee allocate those funds equally to the 4 different categories, or do you assign a number depending on what your needs are?
No, whatever the needs are, because, yeah, it's all broken out in here by open space, recreation, housing, and historic.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So that 892 number that you said was left in there, that's after all these funds are all these projects are
Right.
funded?
Right, that is correct.
Right,
That is correct.
Kathy and then MJ?
One of the things, one of the items that you mentioned was lead paint in the windows. Does anybody know how much lead paint there is in the building, and are we going to address that at another time?
We have
or-
already requested through the capital, is it capital outlay or capital planning here?
Capital outlay.
Capital outlay. We've asked for a building assessment survey, which would tell us that.
Okay. And funds for any remediation for lead paint would be coming from?
Capital outlay.
Yeah, town funds, not CPA.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. MJ?
So it says in the article that the sponsor of this is the Bourne Historic Committee. Is it the library or is it?
Yeah, it's the library. And again, I
Is
saw
there
the
a Bourne
draft.
Historic Committee or is it the Bourne Historical Commission?
It's commission.
Commission.
So,
Yes, and we did appear before them and they unanimously supported this.
okay.
Right.
So both projects are library trustees?
Library of
Right.
Trustees,
Yeah. And again, you can lay it all on me.
where the trustees is the Jonathan Bourne Library to
Thank
be
you very much.
technically correct. And then, but then on C, it's the Bourne Historical Commission.
Yes, that's correct. Commission, not committee, right.
Yeah, Historical Commission.
Historic Commission is correct.
Glenn?
Just Kathy, have you sent that request for the the lead assessment to our office?
I believe it is underneath the building assessment survey, and that has been sent, yes. I don't know if it was sent to your office or whoever does the capital outlay.
Can you make sure it makes it into our office, at least maybe even through Sean Feeney, probably be the right way to go, but make sure
Okay.
he's on it. And then on the windows, and I know it's a separate topic,
I just wanted to note that on the requested capital outlay items for the library, she did put a detailed library building assessment study for $25,000, so I believe that's what we're.
How much?
25,000.
do we have a cost estimate on the windows overall?
Overall, I hate to
Even a ballpark?
300,000. Yeah, we're figuring about 3,000 a window, and there's 100 windows. Now, obviously, some are, I don't know if you've been to the library, some are very large there, about 8 feet by 4 feet, maybe even bigger. Then there's smaller ones too, but we're just averaging that out for now. We talked to some historic window people already, and that's how we got the figure. But yes, we will definitely have to have some experts involved.
Peter?
The only, just from past history is when we have had town hall, the windows restored and replaced to the original condition. Erica can tell you, because her office window, one of them, water already leaks through it because they took the sashes out, puttied them, redid them all over. And so my question is it worth it sometimes to try to restore something?
No,
when
I'm
it may
not trying to restore them. They're only single pane windows. There's no point to it. I mean,
Because
energy inefficiency is,
Because we're using historical money, you may have to,
but
but
that's, we're not using historic money for windows.
That's part of their capital outlay request.
okay, because it says,
So we'll-
no,
we-
over here though, it says
Well, they're
right,
not doing the windows now.
okay.
Right.
We will certainly use a company that will make the windows look identical to how they look now.
Yeah.
So, but they will be modern windows.
If you read it, then it's-
The associated windows is for the
That was
cupola.
You have to put the cupola,
Yeah, there's the
Just
4
those
windows
Windows
there.
associated with the cupola.
There's just
Yeah.
4 of them,
yeah,
and they're mostly the smaller ones.
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
We also mentioned, I know the library trustees are looking into this preliminarily, see if there's any energy grant money out there,
Right.
to replace this type of thing for the facilities, through maybe the Cape Light Compact or something of that nature.
Thank you. Any further question related to these specific requests?
Does
I just want to
Matt-
follow up with your question. You asked, is 892,656 the net of all these projects? It is not the net of all the
If
projects.
it was the number after all these projects had been netted out. So like, is the real number that's in there right now 1.3-ish rounding?
Is that the undesignated
That
fund
was
balance?
reserves and open space
That is
number.
not the undesignated
historic
fund
was
balance.
231.
So prior to these passing next month, the open space reserves is 1,187,656. They're requesting 295,000 in recreation projects, so that 892,656 would be the net of that number.
Okay,
Each category has its own reserve amount.
okay, awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions, MJ?
I just want to comment about the windows. So the process that we went through with the town hall windows, is we did use CPA money. And it did have to go to the historical commission. And they did not want to use the modern replacement windows. They wanted us to repair the windows and said that they could be done, and done well. So I would agree with the assessment of having something that was historically compatible, but a modern window, and doing it through capital outlay so that it is a more energy efficient and practical repair.
Perfect.
Does
I think it
Mass-
would actually be a lot less expensive to do that as well.
Any other further questions?
Does Mass Board of Library Commissioners have any funding out there that they can,
I already tried that. No, they have nothing.
Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks.
And the last application we're presenting tonight is the continuation of the bicycle pathway for the bike trail. And Mr. McPherson, I think, is here representing the Bike Trail Committee. So, and again, these funds will come from the open space reserves, so.
Good evening. I'm David McPherson. I'm chairman of the advisory committee that's been working on the bicycle pathway project. And we've submitted a request for funding to continue the design and engineering work on the project. Where we stand right now is the project, we've broken it up into 4 phases. And the intention is that this money would complete the design on phase 1, which is the closest to construction. And then also, the remaining portion would go to phase 4, which would link up to the town of Falmouth. So if you, phase 1 and phase 4, which is what we're talking about, are at the 2 ends. Phase 1 would connect with the canal pathway. Phase 4 would connect into Falmouth and link up to the existing Shining Sea bikeway. We're working in coordination with Falmouth. Falmouth and Bourne have filed for a joint project with the State Department of Transportation. The project has been deemed eligible for funding. Falmouth has been working on its portion of the design. We've done initial design work on phase 4, and this is to continue that. Most recently, on September 29th, there was a public hearing held by Department of Transportation on what's called the 25% design for phase 1, which is kind of a critical juncture. We had a good turnout, I think, of about 50 people it was a virtual live meeting. So it was via Zoom, but it was actually, opportunity for people to offer their comments at the time. My understanding is that DOT is now, there was a comment period after the hearing. My understanding is that DOT is now reviewing the comments and, looking at them and figuring out how to incorporate them into design. And my understanding is the next step is that the project would have to go before the Conservation Commission in town because there is some wetlands area in phase 1. And then once that is done, then we move to what's called the 75% design. And with this funding, we're basically looking to get to 100% design, which is obviously the final step. And $2 million has been earmarked for that phase 1 construction by the state. And bids are supposed to be advertised for the project in 2025 with construction in that year. 3 of the 4 phases, we've been deemed eligible for funding. Phase 1 is the only one that's actually been approved for funding, and we're going through the process to get the other phases awarded funding as part of the TIP process, if anyone's familiar with that.
So just for clarification, this is for design funds?
Design funds for phases 1 and 4.
Just,
The article also does mention phase 2. Honestly, we don't anticipate to be leftover funding to do phase 2, but if there was, that's what would be the next priority. But we anticipate this would finish off the phase 1 design and make substantial progress on phase 4.
so I guess my suggestion would be just add design into there, just so that town meeting knows, even though they'll be explained. All right, any questions?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Yeah, please.
Yep.
Obviously, the number 3 is missing,
Yes.
for very good reasons. For people who need to understand this, phase 3 begins at Monk's Park.
Yep.
And then what it currently is at, because you do not have the land, and that's all the headwaters of the Pecasset River that's in there, it's all marshlands, and there's a very narrow bridge
Right.
for the train trestle over the Pecasset River.
Correct.
And there's nothing on either side of that particular piece of property because that's all water that has high tides, low tides, and everything else. So, and you have a tunnel there. It's only wide enough for the train to get through.
Right.
So the only way you could connect anything would be you'd have to dump everything from Monk's Park that arrives there onto Shore Road, all the way up Shore Road to the 4 corners at St. John's, the gas station, the pizza parlor, and the cafe. Take a left turn down Bartow's Landing Road all the way to get to the Pecasset train station, having remembered and growing up and taking trains from there, before you could then get into accessible property for that. So you're gonna do all of this, and nobody's working on any kind of a way to address that fact that you are going to be putting all of those individuals onto a very narrow road, which is Shore Road at that point, very curvy, then into a major intersection that we're trying to do, and I'm hopefully there, that for 4 years I've been fighting for, to get it corrected, so we don't have the accidents and car tires flying off cars and going through the front windows of a gas station right there from accidents. So, and then you're gonna ask people to put all the bicycles there and everything else, and then take that and go all the way down Barrows Road, then cross over Barrows Road to go on that side where the train station used to be.
We have not submitted what's called a project notification form for Phase 3, which I will acknowledge is going to be the most challenging from a design perspective,
Understatement.
because we were advised, we are actually preparing to file, again, what they call a PNF for that phase, and we were advised by the state, you guys have got enough on your plate, let's stick to the ones you've applied for, which are 1, 2, and 4. The part of our, so the sections, Phase 2 and 3 are going to be the most challenging. I will not dispute that. But we've yet to see what the engineers may be able to come up with. And the approach, one of the reasons we're applying, we've been focusing on Phases 1 and 4, is that even if the middle portions are never built, which is not what my hope is, but even if they're never built, 1 and 4 are standalone projects because they link up to existing bikeways. Phase 1 would serve people on Mashney Island, Gray Gables, people on Old Dam Road. So again, it serves a purpose by itself. Same thing with Phase 4, serving people who wish to go from Katomet down into Falmouth all the way into Woods Hole. Phase 2, I think, is less challenging than Phase 3. But we haven't, neglected Phase 3 because, we're trying to keep it quiet or anything. It's simply because we were preparing to do that, and we were advised that that would be a little too aggressive by the state.
Because that property and all that wetlands goes from right there in Pecasset by Shore Road.
Yep.
All the way to County Road. That's all part of the headwaters of the Pecasset River.
Yep.
So there isn't much room there, there's enough to take the train tracks that are there, and other than that, it's all water. It is tidal.
Yep.
For starters. So, I mean, you could build you have to, that piece is gonna be very questionable, and it is gonna have to be seriously looked at, because the potential is a disaster if you get it, and then you have to put everybody out on Shore Road.
Yeah, I mean, many of our members are bicyclists who travel Shore Road, and that's why they've gotten involved in this project, because bicycle safety in that area is very challenging. And all I'll say is that, my view is that let's bring this project as far as we can and see what the designers can come up with. There is a bicycle pathways kind of design booklet published by DOT that shows you some of the unique solutions that are come up for obstacles like this. Obstacles like this are not unique when doing a bike project. So I agree with everything you say. It's going to be a challenge, but also 1 and 4 can stand on their own. I heard from yesterday from a woman who lives on Old Dam Road who was excited by Phase 1 on its own because she likes to bike on the canal now, and she has to go up Shore Road, which terrifies her. So.
As I said, this does remind me of the design public hearing that MassDOT put on. So it was a design public hearing for Phase 1, and we really heard comments about Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, but for comments for Phase 1 and even for Phase 4, they're very minimal. These are two projects that don't have as much impact as Phase 3 certainly, or even Phase 2. So these are two sections that the easiest to get constructed, even the least expensive to get constructed, and those other phases will be dealt with at the time when we're ready to move forward with them.
And I would also point out that, so if we look at Phase 2, which I think will be less challenging than Phase 3, that starts at Monk's Park. Well, it starts up by Gray Gables and goes to Monk's Park and would provide access to people throughout town to Monument Beach as well as Monk's Park. So again, I think 1 and 2 by themselves stand on their own, even if we can't complete Phase 3. But, you know, there are some brilliant engineers, and I'm not ready to concede that Phase 3 can't ever be done.
And that river is a state-protected river base, so I think you need to remember that also.
Any further questions?
Just a comment, not that Mr. Town brought up some good points, but there may be some solutions within Complete Streets, which is a project that will, it actually leads into the bike trail at several points, the population centers. And that's not gonna provide the answer that you're looking for, but it could mitigate some of the issues that, you know, as far as that end of Barlow's Landing Road, getting the population centers linked up with the bike trail. I don't have the answer to that. I'm just saying, with Complete Streets, it certainly does add another dimension to this whole project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Just want to say thank you to everybody. I know we took the time, but these projects are extensive. So once again, thank you to one and all.
Of course. Next up on the agenda is ISWM Retained Earnings Transfer for Pilate Leachate Treatment System.
Start out by thanking the FinCom for hearing our request on this particular article, as well as the Selectmen. Thank you, as always. My name's Dan Barrett. I'm the General Manager of the Integrated Solid Waste Management Department. With me tonight is Asa Mintz. He's the Operations Manager up at ISWM, civil engineer, and he's taken the lead on this particular project. So I thought it wise to bring him with me this evening. I'll try to handle the finance end, and I'll start out by getting a little bit around how we got to where we are. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, I'm sure a lot of you heard about them. They're prevalent throughout the environment, literally everywhere. They're in everyone's drinking water, they're in your body, they're in all your household items. Very difficult. Landfills, as I always say, are always the end result, and they're the people who get picked on. We don't generate them, we don't use them, we don't make money from them, but we are, however, the concentration point. The Solid Waste Association of North America has done a great job of kind of giving folks that idea. We're not the villains, we're the solution. Most of the solid waste groups now are working towards a solution to this problem, and it's a big one. Again, very thankful to the people of the town of Bourne who've allowed us the opportunity to take a lead role in this. The study that we're doing is gaining, or has gained national recognition. The consulting engineering firm that heads it up are leaders in PFAS research as well as remediation, and they've done a fantastic job with us. This project, Asa, God help him, decided that he would be the lead on it, and he's done a fantastic job. I can't even explain to you the amount of hands-on plumbing and reorganization that he has done to that facility up there. Those of you that have seen it, it's like a mass of pipes. It is cutting edge. We change every day. There's no one out there that's doing what we've done or what we have done. We had a meeting today with Setco, which is part of Mineral Technologies Incorporated. They're the largest mineral supplier in the world. They supply us with our treatment media. And, you know, I think Asa would back me up a little bit as the gentleman that was giving us, or asking us questions and taking what we had done to heart. And he was meeting tomorrow, I believe, with the National PFAS Committee. And he was going to address some of the issues that we have brought up, the problems that we have solved. So you kind of get an idea of what we're up against. It's kind of exciting, but by the same token, you know, we kind of commiserate with each other every day. We need a little less excitement in ISWM right now. We got a lot of things going on.
But it's a worthwhile project, and again, I'd like to thank the town for letting us get involved. Take a look quick at the finances. In November, on November 6, 2020, the town approved $500,000 transferred out of retained earnings. We arrived at that number by setting up a budget through our consultants. The original number of everything that we thought we could do, and again, this is cutting edge, so we're not really sure what we can and can't do. We're cutting teeth here. The number was $443,178. It was a 10-month schedule that got started a little bit later than our original thought, and currently, right now, we are at, as of today, $438,965.50. So we're pretty darn close, 10 months into the project. I will tell you that the numbers that were on my original estimate look nothing like the numbers that we actually spent, which is not unusual for a project of this nature. We were able to get quite a bit of the materials donated. Not donated, they were research. Setco themselves donated all the media they're allowing us to use. They've changed the media a couple times. We've added clarifiers and upfill filters, which are nothing more than glorified pool filters, sand filters. But they've added another element to our testing that's been very beneficial. So that's where we are today. We got about $61,000 left. We've calculated, again, today we had a meeting with our consultants. We've calculated that we're going to just about make it through to the town meeting. If we don't get approval for this article, the fallback is we just shut it down. Some of the equipment's going to go out now, obviously, because winter's approaching. We've reached a point where we think we have pretty much enough data to finalize and come up with a final design. ASA's done two overnight. We're going to do one more, and that will give us enough flow through that system, through the final system, that we think we're going to have enough to. Well, we don't think we're going to have enough to come up with a final design. And along with that, we're also monitoring or continuing to monitor. It's incredible the research that's going into this. This is huge. There's a lot of money to be made here. That's what the consultants are looking at. We're just looking at our end goal is to find a place to that will consistently accept our leachate, and we're almost there. And I'll say one more thing and I'll stop, but the PFAS removal aside, some of the things that we've come up with and ASA has designed and built through parts that we've been able to acquire has rendered our leachate good enough to be attractive to other facilities. So we're hoping that we can get approval to start moving some stuff over the winter. I'll get into further expenses after ASA walks you through what he's built and what he's working on. And then we'll talk about why we think we might need $350,000 more.
Thanks. So just to give you an idea of where we are and where this initial 500,000 has gotten us, we started, just looking at treatment technologies in general, and we kind of came upon a product called Fluorosorb. It's a bentonite clay product. It is effectively, if you look at it, it looks like kitty litter. That's what it is. So it's like an aggregate type product. It's a little counterintuitive that we're going to flow water through clay, but it's the way it is. It stays in an aggregate form. So we started with a bench scale study on this just to prove the efficacy of it, and the bench scale study was very good. We got 99% removal of PFAS, but we're only talking, a liter of leachate at most. So we set this pilot scale study up, and we built a very simple treatment process to start. That was one of the first, or the highest goal was to keep this thing as simple as possible. I mean, we're not a huge landfill. We're small by landfill standards, and so we need to keep the finances proper. So we set up our pilot scale, our initial pilot scale project.
which was very simple, was filtration and then treatment. And we ran about 70,000 gallons through it. And after 70,000 gallons, we started to see breakthrough. And breakthrough is just a fancy word for the treatment system is not working. We're getting PFAS that's moving through this system. So, and out of it, out the back end. So we had to kind of retool a little bit and determine what was causing that, and ultimately we found out that iron was building up on these units. So we had to kind of step back and insert another process into our treatment, which was iron removal. So in doing that, we actually, instead of inserting a process, we actually kind of created a new process. And the new process was aeration, was clarification, which was the actual iron removal process. It was a filtration step and then the treatment step. And as Dan said, they're a little more than glorified pool filters, but they're upflow sand filters. And so we use a process of coagulation and flocculation to remove the iron, and that gets the water, or the leachate, relatively clear. And then we are able to treat it and run it through these sand filters. The first sand filter is just to collect any kind of sediment that makes its way out of the clarifier. And the second unit is actually the treatment unit. And the Dynasand unit, this is kind of where it gets a little tricky. We're in uncharted territory here, where the treatment media itself is, like I said, it's a kitty litter type material. And it's not durable like a sand filter would normally see. So we're actually testing to see if this unit will work from a physical level and also from a removal level. So that's kind of where we are right now. We've run about 120,000 gallons. We've proved that we can actually make our second treatment train work and be effective. We're far ahead of where we were on our first treatment train, so we've made progress on that front, and so that's where we are right now. We're continuing to run every day. Next week we're going to run. We're shutting it off each night. These systems tend to run a little bit better if you just run them continuously, like a wastewater treatment plant. So we're going to run next week. We're going to try to run a bunch of consecutive days and have people there 24/7 to do that. Just to see how things work, and also to put more gallons through the system before winter comes, so we can actually get better data in helping us develop the full-size system, if we choose to do that. We're hoping to get 150, 200,000 gallons of treatment. So, we're sort of still in the intermediate step here, right? So once we're done with proving the technology and the treatment, we need to move to what do we do with this media. So that's going to be a whole nother study in itself. We're planning on putting it back in the landfill, but we need to sequester the PFAS and solidify it so that way we don't have any sort of recirculation back into our leachate, and we don't want to kind of create that cycle where we're just putting leachate or putting PFAS in the landfill, taking it out, treating it, and putting it back. So that's kind of where we are, and that's what we're moving towards. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions?
Madam Chair? So you sort of touched on this, but what happens to the PFAS that's absorbed in your clay? I mean, what's the next step?
Well, that's sort of, that would be our next step, is to study that and see how we can sequester that material permanently. We've talked to a gentleman out in Michigan who is familiar with this process. Problem is we're treating wastewater. This is not an uncommon thing to remove PFAS out of drinking water, which is relatively clean, but wastewater has a lot of other contaminants in it. So we need to develop a column of Fluorosorb that is exhausted. Basically, it has PFAS in it, and then and just prove the whole treatment process. And then we need to study that. But we would like to probably put it back into a Portland cement, solidify it, and put it back in the landfill, whether that's in a vessel or just in, a cement, like a concrete block itself. But we need to study that still, so.
Thank you.
There is good news on that front, though. This may sound familiar, but it's a similar requirement that we had when we took sulfur out of the landfill gas in order to burn it. One of the requirements of that project was we needed to put it back in our landfill and not have it come back again. And there's promising research, as Asa said, with the Portland cement sequestering it. So we're pretty hopeful that that's gonna come out as well. One thing that's interesting is there's a lot of academics looking at this stuff. I think
Colorado School of Mines is a big
yeah,
one, yeah.
at Colorado School of Mines, was it
They've done a-
southeastern Michigan?
Yeah, they've done a bunch of research for us, through the help of Setco, who is the producer of Fluorazord. So,
In eastern
Free of
Michigan, Dr. Chris Ballone is the guy who's working on the sequestration part of it. We're not there yet. We're ready to get there. We, honestly, one of the good things about the Fluorazord product is you don't need a whole lot of it. And once you get it, and once it's exhausted, it's a very small amount. We could put it back in the landfill and be able to sequester it. That's our goal.
Glenn?
So the concrete would be a usable product?
No.
No.
No, it's merely just a block to sequester the PFAS.
it's just so it's not available to go back into our leachate, right? We don't want to kind of create this loop that we're constantly treating it.
Rich?
Yes, I guess for Dan, when this $350,000 is removed from retained earnings, where does that leave the enterprise fund at this point in term of retained earnings? And I don't have those numbers in front of me, so.
I don't have them either, and I'm not gonna put Erica on the spot.
She'll have them.
No, we had,
She'll have them.
we had 10.8 million in retained earnings. And that's after, we took a bold step this year, one that makes me happy. I mean, Mary Jane will remember me crying about our debt. I've always wanted to pay debt, pay it down, pay it down. We took a huge step. Erica, shepherded us through a $2.8 million pay down of our debt. So we're in good shape. Feel a lot better about that. And the 10.8 million is left after that, I believe.
Yep, so after you take out the OPEB liability that we talked about the other night, and this 350,000, we are left at a retained earnings balance of $10,190,000. That was 10 million, I'm sorry.
Scared me for a
I didn't
second.
see if anybody's listening, which is well over our working capital requirements per the financial policies.
Thank you.
Mary Jane?
I think this is a great project, and anyone that listened to the Cape Cod Commission hearings, it was very helpful that when PFAS was brought up, it was very clear that our landfill is on the cutting edge of dealing with this issue, and getting rid of PFAS, the goal is to get it out of the drinking water, so it's less in the environment and less of a problem for our wastewater. But I want people on the committee to realize the cost of leachate disposal. It is a huge cost, and it becomes very problematic when their PFAS levels are too high. So it's really, really important to the operation of the landfill that we support this.
Certainly, PFAS, and again, as we continue to design, you have to remember that there currently are no set regulations. We're going to be required to test for PFAS in our groundwater within the next year. Next round of regulations, we fully expect that, and I think it's a good thing. There's no sense in sticking your head in the sand. You gotta know it's there. A lot of the older landfills around the Cape, it's showing up in them. It's pretty much a bet that it will be in our old landfill as well. So we'll continue to keep working to try to get it out. The implications go far beyond landfills as well. Wastewater treatment facilities are having the same problem. They're concentration points. And, as Asa alluded to, testing groundwater, checking groundwater with granular activated carbon, it's not easy. I don't want to oversimplify it, but it is a bit easier. You take a look at, some groundwater contaminated with PFAS, and you look at it, it's crystal clear. You take a look at what we generate for leachate, and you realize very quickly that it's a whole different animal. So not only are the solid waste people working on it, but the wastewater treatment facilities are working on it.
What do we spend to get rid of leachate every year? It's a big number.
Do I have to say that? Right around between 1.2 and 1.5 million a year, and that's
A lot of money.
that's why we're trying to get out ahead of it, because with the introduction of PFAS and other contaminants of emerging concern out there, we got to be ready. We got to be able to move to treat our own leachate.
Does that price ever go down, Dan?
I don't know.
Patent it?
Well, I don't want to get into that right now, but our consultants are working towards that. This is definitely a viable solution, and like I said, it's getting national attention. I was a little surprised today at Setco's eagerness to talk to us, and they keep giving us media of different quality, and they've treated it differently to see if it works better. So they like us, and there is talk of patenting this process as we get it done. A little premature for that. I keep warning everybody, I don't want to crack the champagne bottles until we're darn sure we got something we can put our arms around.
And, you know, that being said, this may not be the technology, you know, we're
Exactly.
still looking at other technology as well, so. Is there any way you can partner with our area universities and colleges within the region to help learn from this as well? I mean, because this is an opportunity that doesn't come around that often, and if you can partner with some of the area universities just to learn about this, it's a way of giving back.
We have reached out a couple times earlier in the project. The thing to realize, I guess, is that although this is an expensive endeavor, testing is incredibly expensive. And it appears to me anyways that the people who specialize, particularly in like geology and groundwater, they're the ones, like Colorado School of Mines, you're not gonna get any better than that. And we're sharing that information with everybody. Bourne, as always, we're a public entity and we're out front. You know, we try to keep close to the vest. As I say, I like to be quiet under the radar, as most of you know, but this one's getting us out in the open. We're a little uncomfortable with it, so we're gonna keep it at the vest length, or at arm's length as long as we can.
Any further questions from the committee or select board, Amanda?
Ready for Dan to give us that explanation on what the money covers.
The additional?
Yes.
What we hope to do, and, you know, I'm becoming the guy I said I never wanted to be. Asa took my job. I like to be the guy excited building the pipes, but I'm the guy who has to make sure where the money is, and Erica yells at me when I don't. What our goal here is, we have two goals. One, obviously, is to eliminate PFAS from our leachate. The intermediate goal, or the immediate goal, is to get our current leachate acceptable to more facilities so that we're not always searching for someplace to get rid of it. The $350,000 will cover equipment that we hope to leave behind. It's going to get cold. We can't do continued treatment without having some type of enclosure. However, I think the clarifier that ACE has been working with and the media that we need just to get it down to take some of the suspended solids out of it, take the iron out of it, some of the metals come out of it, and some of the PFAS drop out. Not all of it, but some of the PFAS, quite a bit of it.
50%.
50%. I didn't want to say that without verification. So that's pretty good, coming right off the end. And we can tell that to people. You know, we're not going to go out and tout that we're removing PFAS, but certainly in the intermediate, they can look at that as a bit of a help. So that money will go to fund that continued operation with, I call it a collateral advantage. We haven't completely or 100% solved the PFAS problem yet, but we can at least move some leachate in the meantime. And again, if, you know, we're not going to spend anything that we don't need. You know, whatever we don't spend will go back.
Further questions or comments? Thank you so much for coming this evening. I appreciate it.
Thanks for hearing us.
Thank you.
All right. The charter review article is being deferred to Monday, October 25th. The chair informed me of a scheduling conflict this evening. Which brings us to Article 17 for the citizens petition.
Yes, get rid of it, 'cause I don't want 100 of them. Actually, where should it be?
And if you can state your names for the record, please.
Hi, my name's W. Thomas Barlow.
I'm Galen Skip Barlow.
Thank you.
Okay. I recognize some of you, but many of you I don't. I served as a sewer commissioner
this town for 11 years, and 8 of those years I was a full-time employee, so that was, my job. And back in 1988, when I ran for office, my platform was to sewer Buzzards Bay at Hideaway Village. And upon getting elected, myself and my other board members went forward with the project. We had an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Wareham, which was very difficult. And some of you probably have read it. We went forward with Anderson Nichols, engineers, and designed the sewage system for Buzzards Bay. There was a lot of debate about that because Wareham just had strictly gravity feed, and we were looking at grinder pumps because of Taylor's Point and Hideaway Village, of the terrain and the depth to groundwater. And so anyway, we did all that, and we had Selco Construction construct the project, and Louis Pellegrini was our director, and we had George Tabou after that for a number of years. So kind of familiar with the sewer system in Buzzards Bay. Was involved with the Buzzards Bay Coalition for like 10 years. I was the Buzzards Bay Action Committee member for 10. Was on the administrative grant committee for the Buzzards Bay project. So, we had like pump out boats and, seaside pump stations. We had herring runs. We had all kinds of different grants that we gave to the cities and towns. So we became, familiar with Wareham and their operation and what it entailed. So the proposal that we're putting forward is to stop Wareham from transferring their wastewater from the current location in the ISWM River to the Mass Maritime at the Cape Cod Canal. Now, they've been discharging at that location since the mid-'70s, so it's probably 40, 45 years. I remember because I worked up in Wareham as early as in the late '70s. People were very upset with what the discharge did to the ISWM River. So there was a lot of groups and committees that brought their concerns to the selectmen and assessors at that time. And later on, they just became sewer commissioners. But that time, they were like combined positions. But so the desire to relocate that outfall has been something ongoing for 35, 40 years. And the reason being is, you just had gentlemen talk about PFAS. Well, what does that do to fish? Okay, fish ingest, they're just tiny pieces of plastic. That's what you got to think of as like microfibers of plastic. And the fish ingest them, and it stops their digestive system, and they die. And, it's well documented. So, there isn't a lot of fish up there. And the environment there is pretty bad. So to send that outfall, and it's not just PFAS coming out of a sewage treatment plant. There are a lot of other contaminants that affect the marine life and the marine ecology. So, to transfer that over to the canal, just because there's, 5 billion gallons an hour of water coming out, it only goes so far, and that was demonstrated by the Woods Hole Group. Goes so far, then it comes back every 6 hours. And so what will happen over time, this material will be saturating, Gray Gables, Mashney, it'll go all the way down to the neck, Wings Neck. I mean, that's what was demonstrated. So you're just going to, destroy that habitat. And so, and there's other things with sewage issues. Town of Plymouth, they thought that they were going to do a force main for one location at the harbor, and the force main blew up. It was only in there for 15 years, $57 million of damages to the town of Plymouth. Force mains don't always stay together. It's just unfortunate. They do blow apart. And the older the force main is, the more likely they're going to have problems. They're going to have cracks, or they're going to have, actually ruptures. Town of Wareham's pipes, their mains, are actually 20 years older than the main that broke in Plymouth. I don't know how familiar you are with how these projects work, but the way it worked was that the feds paid 75%, the state paid 15%, and the town did 10% in-kind services. So all these cities and towns have all these, giant, sewage treatment plants that they can't afford to maintain, and they can't keep the equipment up, and they can't replace the pipes. I think the new company here is looking at our pipes that are only 30 years old, and they've already, discovered that there's problems with inflow, which is basically outside water, just like rainwater, inflowing into the pipes and actually going to the plant. It's been such a problem in Wareham is that they kept on having overflows. And so in 2019, because it was reoccurring, all plants have it. And it's when there's a lot of groundwater and there's a lot of rain, like we had a couple of weeks ago, it infiltrates into the system, and you can't stop. You can't turn off the pipes and have a backflow. That would cause tremendous damage. You'd have sewage backing up people's houses. There's sinks everywhere. So when that happens, you've got to let it go. You've got to let it go, and you've got to let it go into the bay. And does this happen? It happens all the time, because those facilities just don't, you build it for regular capacity. You don't build them for peak storm events or high groundwater. So, as I said, Wareham did not go and replace the pipes because it's just, they have 61 miles of pipes and 45 pump stations. So it's just, a tremendous infrastructure to deal with. So what they did was they spent $10 million and lined a 2 million gallon holding facility so that they'll have at least 2 million gallons in a storm event before they get over, before they have to release the water. So that was a solution in 2019 that they went forward with. But they're in a very difficult situation, and I understand. I met with Guy. He's a friend of mine, Guy Campina. He's the director up there of the facility, and
He's like a year so younger than me. I've known him 50 years, and talked about it, and if he can't get to the canal, you know, he can no longer he cannot expand his facility. In which he can continue on, but he can't expand. And, you know, so much money is tied up. And around 15 years ago, they went from, I don't know if you know, but secondary treatment to a tertiary treatment, which is a higher level of treatment. It's, actually, it's, you know, New Bedford's only secondary, Dartmouth is secondary, all these other plants are secondary. It's tertiary treatment over there. So, I mean, a lot of money has been spent at that facility. But, so anyway, we went out and asked people how they felt about this. And when they opened it up with the engineers for the town to talk about what's the main issue, there was 80 people that were online, but we received 735 signatures opposing going to the canal. That was like the #1 topic, even though the engineers put it as second or something like that. And they said it was only 100 people that signed. We went into the town hall to verify that they received 735 signatures, and they did. Nancy was there, and the then town administrator was there as well, and they verified that there was 735 signatures. So, because it was advertised differently and it was promoted differently, Skip came in 2 weeks after that and presented the sewer commissioners with 935 signatures opposing this proposed outfall. Some people said to me, why are you going after this now? This time, you can just sit back and wait. And the concern is that, in talking directly to the person in Wareham who's actually going to do this, is that they have already spent preliminary design money. Their engineers came up with 3 possible options. They chose one of those options, and they're pursuing it. And they signed another contract with that engineering company to go forward if they get approval. I've been, politics for 20, 30 years, and, the way it kind of works is you build momentum on an issue, and, even if, it's a large group of people that are opposed to it, as it goes down the line, in other words, when money's being spent and action being taken, you get to the point is that even though you're opposed to it, you realize, wait a minute, we've got $20 million invested, and we're part of this deal, and they're building the pipe. We can't back out of this. We can't say no. We're too far along. So before we get too far along, we're going to bring this to the voters to have an opportunity to discuss this. And those that are in favor of this option will speak in favor of bringing the pipe to the academy and discharging the outfall. And those of us who are opposed will get up and speak, and, there's hundreds of reasons why they don't want to have the outfall. PFAS, I'm just mentioning tonight because we just, heard it earlier. I mean, it's just, and talking to, he said, I mean, what can I do? He goes, it's in everything. It's in all the products. It's, it's in the water. He goes, yeah, I know it's spewing from the facility, and I know it's killing the fish. He goes, but we don't have the technology or the means currently to remove it
from the septic outflow. Maybe in 5 years or 10 years, they'll come up with a solution. But for right now, when you release the tertiary treated septic, 3.5 to 10 million gallons per day, you know, you're gonna kill striped bass, you're gonna kill bluefish, you're gonna kill, you know, all the products that come to that canal. I mean, it's just an amazing place to fish. It's a place, you know, to bike. It is a national park that's administrated by the Army Corps of Engineers. You know, you're saying I'm gonna put all this effluent in the middle of a national park. I mean, people just can't even believe that it's being proposed. That was the first thing, is people saying, oh, that's impossible, nobody would do that. And that's the first reaction, is like, no, nobody would suggest to do that. Just disbelief that this is being proposed. So anyway, you've already sat for like an hour and a half listening. I'll shut up. I got a lot to say, but, you know, I appreciate your time, your willingness to serve the town. You know, it's just, especially with everything else going on in life, to take 2-3 hours out and sit here and listen to people yap. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to be a lot more brief, if I may. We've been confronted with a this or that situation, and the this situation is the current situation that exists on Taylor's Point with a discharge that's there. That discharge isn't really a life-changing discharge. That discharge is, actually, the state still gets non-detect when there's testing on it. They get non-detect there. And it's secondary treatment. It's not great treatment. But Mass Maritime treats their wastewater facility like we treat our septic systems at home. They're very careful what they put in it. They are. And they know what goes into it, because they buy whatever goes in there for cleaning agents, ammonia, bleach. They've got a permit to blow out their boilers, I think, once a year. That facility, and I'm not sticking up for them or saying it's right or wrong, but even though it's secondary discharge, they know what it is. There's not a lot of toxins in it. No food waste. All their food waste goes off-site, goes to a pig farm, actually. There's no food waste in it. It's just human waste, basically, and soaps and whatever they use there, but they know what's going in there. What comes from Wareham, and they want to tie into 2 or 3 more towns, they have absolutely no idea what they're dumping in the river. They might take the nutrients out, but like Tom said, PFAS, pesticides, bleaches, ammonia, all kinds of things. Mass Maritime's not doing that. But once we bring in waste from a huge area that's not really accounted for that well, even though it's tertiary treated, you know, tertiary treated is better than secondary treated. I'm not going to argue that. The volume that's coming is huge, huge. Mass Maritime right now dumps approximately, if you look at the water tank up here, 2 of those a month. 2 of those a month. That's what Mass Maritime dumps. The beginning from Wareham is 3.5 water tanks a day, up to 10 of our water tanks per day. Think of that volume. Think of it. It's huge. So I think that we really should, I'm going to ask you guys to support talking about this at town meeting. You can say, you know, recommend no, that's up to you. But I really think the people of this town really need to talk about this. This is huge. The canal is the biggest asset in this community. People come from all over the country to visit it. They come here to go fishing. No commercial fishing in the canal. It's all recreational. And there's
3 million visitors a year there, you know? I don't want to see it get worse. And I don't really think, personally, me, I'm a shell fisherman. I really can't say that I've been impacted by Mass Maritime. I really can't. Not, because they're so conscious of what they put in. They really, and have been. They have been since the first dye test that was done there in early 1980s. Because they knew. They knew everybody in town knew after that dye test where it goes. So they became really careful and really protective. Don't expect somebody up in Rochester to care at all about what they throw in the pipe that's going to come to Bourne. They're not going to care. People in Marion aren't going to care. People in Middleborough aren't going to care. You know, it's pretty easy. And you got to understand, in Bourne, we've got trash pickup, guys. They don't have that in Wareham. It's so much cheaper just to throw your garbage in the sink, through a grinder, see you later. It's sewage, and it's nutrients, and that's going right to the you know, even Mass Maritime, they don't put their food waste in the sewer plant. I'm absolutely sure of that. They don't do it. You know, so it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, but what we have right now, even though it's secondary treated, is still a lot better than the potential that's coming down the road. So I would ask you to give us the opportunity to raise this question at town meeting. Thank you.
Before I start taking questions or comments, I would like clarification on 2 things. If the Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners, if this article passes at town meeting, that asks the Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners to, and for people watching at home, I'm sorry, the article itself is to see if the town will vote to request that the Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners oppose any federal, state, or local wastewater permits for a collection system for the Massachusetts Maritime Academy in the Taylor's Point Arena of Buzzards Bay and the subsequent disposal by direct discharge of treated or untreated wastewater into the Cape Cod Canal or the waters immediately adjacent thereto. So I just wanted to state that because I have 2 questions I just want clarified. If this passes at town meeting, what jurisdiction does the Board of Selectmen or Sewer Commissioners have over federal, state permits?
That's something we would have to direct the town council and they can advise us.
And my other question is the Sewer Commissioners planning to meet to discuss this article that's gonna potentially affect their business down the line?
Board of Selectmen will hear, will speak on every article as submitted, but the sewer commissioners may want to have a separate meeting on that article by itself.
Is there a plan for that before the November 15th meeting?
We will be reviewing articles on November 2nd. As Board of Selectmen.
I'm asking about sewer
Sewer commissioners, we will have an agenda item, because it mentions the sewer commissioners.
Yes.
At first, I didn't think it mentioned the sewer commissioners, so I was like, oh, it's only the Board of Selectmen, but it does mention the sewer commissioners. So I think we don't have any jurisdiction to oppose, federal, state, or local. We don't have any jurisdiction in the matter, but there are hearings. So in the process of permitting, there's currently the Mass Maritime permit for discharge is under review, and so there's a comment period and there's a public comment period. And if this outfall proposal goes forward, there will be comment periods and public comment periods. And so I think what this article is asking is for the Board of Sewer Commissioners and the Board of Selectmen to oppose.
And just real quick, I just want to get that out because I think that's fundamental when we discuss this going forward. So I just wanted to bring up those 2 main points.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mean, and it's a private petition, so a private petition is written the way the private petitioners want it to be written.
Yes.
And so sometimes there are difficulties with the wording in terms of how it should be written. My understanding in speaking with the moderator is that she views this as a non-binding referendum. So that it is, and this is the way that the town council, when he responded to this petition, felt it was a non-binding resolution. It's a resolution to get the will of town meeting. How does town meeting, we're in the middle of a comprehensive wastewater management plan. We haven't come to the point of even knowing that one of the solutions for Bourne is gonna be this. And I understand your point about, we don't want to wear him get too far down the line, where they can do it anyway, no matter what we say, but, we're in a process, so having the will of town meeting is not a bad thing. How do people feel about it? What is the direction that they wanna give to the Board of Selectmen? And I think that's what this is trying to say.
Madam Chairman,
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
if I may, just from the petitioner's point of view and our attorney, it's not a resolution. It's a resolution would be non-binding. An article is binding. All articles are binding.
See, this is where we need the clarification.
Bob
Well,
Troy
no.
wrote something.
I think it was right, I'm just saying, it's stated right on the response from town council. And so, it is therefore my opinion as town council that the petition may be considered by special town meeting and lawfully acted upon by town meeting voters. In other words, with the position of Wareham from the individual that I spoke to, not the board, but the individual, was that presentations have been made repeatedly to different towns and different committees, not only in the town of Bourne, but in other towns. So there is no record of any objection to them going forward. So when they go for the permits, they don't anticipate or expect any boards or committees to object. What the petitioners here are saying is when those permits are sought, that the town of Bourne, through its Board of Selectmen and Sewer Commissioners, represent town meeting members who have spoken by a vote. I don't know, I was the selectman for 12 years. We never, ever, not, even though we were totally against the will of town meeting, when they took a vote and for action, we did not ignore it. We would be liable. An individual voter could go down to the district attorney and say, hey, this is the vote of the town meeting to do such. The Board of Selectmen chose not to do it. This is why we have votes at town meeting. This is they call it open town meeting form of government. I wish the Charter Committee could be here to talk about it, but that, all decision-making, the legislative body is the town meeting members, and Finance Committee, everybody taking a vote. So, yeah, there's a lot of votes that you sit as an individual that you don't support, you go the other way, but, the town meeting says this is the way we go, that's what we do, we swear to it. I mean, we take an oath of office that we will perform our duties faithfully. So, yeah, so if town meeting chooses to do this, and that's a big if. Even though there's hundreds of people who sign a petition, you get to town meeting and instead of, the 400 or 500 people you expect to see, you see 100 and, it goes the other way. You've been around long enough.
I have been around long enough to see.
Yeah, so we don't know what the vote at town meeting is gonna be.
Real quick, did you pull up the town council
Yeah, I have something here. I want to discuss it with the board first because I want to make sure this isn't privileged before we send it out. Because
I think that, I don't think this is an answer we can give tonight. I
Yeah.
think we have to listen to the petitioners, we have to ask the questions. That's why we don't vote things on the first night. So we'll come back, we'll get back to you with some clarification
Okay.
on, on what the result of the vote would be,
Okay.
if it were a
What-
positive.
So,
what we can do is if we're able to share this information, then we may want to, but it has to be an executive session. We may want to do an executive session.
so that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
You guys do your thing, get back to me, and we'll figure something out. But basically, inform the committee, expect another joint meeting to discuss this.
Yes.
So, we'll figure that out. All right, so now we'll start taking questions and comments regarding this petition. I'm gonna start with Rich, because he had his hand up first, and then Amanda, and then Wayne.
My question is about the wording itself. It specifically talks about Mass Maritime Academy, and there's no mention, from what I'm seeing, about Wareham. And is that because they plan to funnel the water through the Mass Maritime system and then into the canal? Is that the plan? I think that's confusing and will be confusing for voters.
Well, we're going to make it clear, let's just vote yes on article whatever. But the proposal is that using the Mass Maritime, which they have a permit, and so they only can do this because Mass Maritime has a permit. You couldn't just go forward and establish a new outfall somewhere. So they're taking advantage of the pipe that exists at Mass Maritime Academy. And currently, it's 76,000, 77,000 per day. And what the request will be is to change that permit to 3.5 to 10 million gallons per day. So we're after that permit. If that permit, the Board of Selectmen says, we're not in favor of, this discharge, this level of discharge on this permit, although the Board of Selectmen does not have jurisdiction, Mass DEP, EPA, they're all aware that it would be a real affront to a community to take sewerage from another community and dump it and affect their community. I mean, I can't even think of any situation where they've turned their back on, they believe strongly in the Home Rule Charter, so they kind of go with the community's recommendation regarding wastewater permits and sewage permits, and so I think if this prevails and this board raises their objections, that'll be the end of this proposal. But that's a big if, it's a big if. We'll see what happens.
I'm going to answer your question a different way, if you don't mind. The current pipe is less than 4 foot in diameter. It's not gravity flow. It's not a gravity flow, 77,000 gallons a day through that pipe. They have to propel it. There's actually a propeller in there to propel that water into the canal. And if they do a dye test, it actually comes up, it looks like a candy cane when it comes up. I've seen it. To put 3.5 to 10 million gallons a day through that same pipe, they're going to have to almost have a jet blowing into the canal. I tell you, it's going to have to, if they don't replace the pipe,
Yeah, they're gonna do a different
if they're using the existing pipe, and that's what the permit's for, it's going to come out of there. Like, you're not going to be able to believe how it's going to come out of there, and that answers your question, I hope. That's, they intend to use that pipe, because that's the only thing that has a permit.
That's a quick follow-up.
Quick follow-up.
if this were to pass, does this impact the operations of Mass Maritime at all in terms of?
No, Mass Maritime's
Exceed
grandfathered,
their
and they
need.
have their plant and their pipe, and they're golden, at least for now. The state may eventually make them upgrade to tertiary treatment, I don't know. But I do know that they maintain their facility to the highest standards, as opposed to, say, and I visited Wareham a lot of times. I'm on the Board of Health, I go up there, I see what's going on. I've been aware of the operation of the plant since it was built in the early 1970s. I was good friends with the first guy who ran that plant, used to stop by there and say, God bless you. It was awful. It was from day one, and it's still awful. Tommy and I both go up there still. It's, it's really, you don't want to wear good clothes or a good jacket or anything when you go there, because you're not going to wear it again. It's really bad. And I encourage you to go visit it, but I encourage you to, use disposable clothes. But, I've been there a lot. Tommy's been there a lot. And in 50 years, we've been there a lot. And, the place is 50 years old. We get rid of buildings that are 50 years old.
Right, but Guy's been cited by the EPA being outstanding. He is very, as I said, I've known him 50 years. He's a great person. He does the very best job he can with the money that he has available. But like I said, the costs are phenomenal for treatment plants, and then the deferred costs of the pipes, the pump stations, all that. You just can't possibly, a town can't generate enough money to, maintain all that equipment, up to reliable standards. It's just a difficult situation.
Thank you, Ernie. So just in general, this states that it's a request. I'd be interested to hear how legally binding a request is for the town. And second of all, do we know who issues the permit to Mass Maritime? And if not Bourne, whether they have any formal input or approval on that permit?
DEP and EPA,
And does the town of Bourne have any formal input or sign off in that?
not really. It's a state facility, so the State Department of Public Health, they have state inspectors that inspect state property.
And if I may, so does the pipe come through elsewhere in, I'm not familiar with it, I apologize, to how that pipe comes in. Does it through another part of Bourne?
Right now, it discharges underneath the football field and into the canal, and then it floats in my backyard on the beach.
Okay.
So, on some days, depending on which way the current's going. But with with the town of Wareham, I believe that the one of the two proposals I've heard, one is going down the rail tracks, parallel to the rail tracks, and then come down Academy Drive, or down Route 6 or Cranberry Highway, which is, and it doesn't make sense to go back over there and dig it all up after they just did all the work in some parts. But one of the other options is going down Route 6 and then make the right on Academy Drive, go by the front of my house, and then, so I'm gonna get pooped on either which way it goes.
I was only asking, because I was wondering if they could accomplish it a different way for the parts where it would go through Bourne, if there could be like a zoning bylaw or a general bylaw that would prohibit the pipe coming through Bourne. I don't know if that could or not.
One option that's been considered is to come through Onset and bear under the water and then come into Mass Maritime, so it's never on town of Bourne land. That's something that's being discussed too, but, I think the whole point of this bylaw, this article, is to slow it down. And, to sit back and do the homework, and to not have the town of Wareham, Marion, and other places force this on us, because at a minimum, we need to find other options. The town of Wareham needs to find other options, because and of course, the Business Bay Coalition is gonna say, this is the best, because a lot of the research and development's already done, and it's the cheapest. I don't care about what's cheapest. I want what's best for what's over in my backyard and the people in Great Gables and everything else. So it's, but I think we need to have a serious discussion on this. Because when I'm talking to Congressman Keaton's staff and state Senate staff, and they're saying, oh, Tom Guarino said this was a done deal years ago, and this is the way they were thinking all along. Get on board. Over my dead body.
Glenn, did you have a response directly to that?
I'm all set. I think Amanda's question was answered.
Wayne?
So you're saying that they want to dramatically increase the flow there. Now, are they gonna shut down their own discharge and have everything coming here?
We don't know what they intend to do. They want to send 3.5 million gallons to 10 million gallons a day here.
Right.
That's what they want to send here, and they explained that to the selectmen when they presented last winter. To me, forget Wareham. I mean, we've got apples and oranges here, completely two different things. If you want Mass Maritime to be better, let them tie into the town system. We've got more capacity now. We've got, we let them tie in here, and that would take care of their problem, because they've got a sewer plant sitting in the middle of their campus that they want to grow. They want to grow their campus, so they're looking for a way, to maybe get, they call it a power plant, not a sewer plant, but it's in the middle of their campus anyway, and they'd like to get that out of there. And, but they're really conscious of what they do, and if we tied them into Buzzards Bay, forget Wareham. That would take a lot of pressure off the customers of the sewer in Bourne, because Mass Maritime would be paying their freight. And they have to pay to go to Wareham anyway, so if they paid us, it would take a lot of pressure off the people in Buzzards Bay, because it's only Buzzards Bay, there's only 1,000 people in Buzzards Bay that pay the sewer bill, regardless of how high it gets. There's only 1,000 people who pay that bill. And, that would be kind of a blessing to the people in Buzzards Bay for them to tie into our system. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Does anybody know how much the town of Bourne actually puts into the Wareham system in a day? I mean,
90,000, I think, wasn't it? One time it was 90,000.
Probably now it's probably about 50 or 60,000. With our new plan, it's probably only about 50 or 60,000 gallons a day.
and where does the discharge from our plant go?
These sheets on the ground and eventually go.
Leaching fields, it's a groundwater discharge, so it's leaching fields, that it goes into leaching fields.
Right.
It's not a direct discharge, so there's a difference between a direct discharge and a groundwater
Just
discharge.
to your point about Mass Maritime Academy, which, back in '91, the board wanted to include Mass Maritime Academy because it was right there. But the town of Wareham only wanted to take, they excluded the Mass Maritime Academy and the Otis Air Force Base. Their position was that they didn't want us anyway, but the reason why they had to, in order to further develop their system, they had to take us, we had to do it regionally. That was the state's position. Neither Bourne nor Wareham wanted to go forward in this intermunicipal agreement. We didn't want to get financially tied. We knew what they were, what they were stuck with as far as operations. But we wouldn't have got any federal state money, and they wouldn't have got any federal state money. So the state was in control on that, and that's how we got involved in this. But yeah, it would have been, so much easier had we had Mass Maritime Academy right from the beginning as part of this sewer system.
In the current contracts, is Bourne still prohibited from allowing Mass Maritime to join?
No, they can join. In fact, that's an option on the table. If we,
Oh, good, okay.
I'm more, I was always, let me
That's separate.
retract that for a second. It's an option I would like to explore, as in Mass Maritime, if we can legally allow you to tie in where you abandon your outfall pipe in its entirety. You get what you want. We take care of you. WAM needs to take care of themselves.
Right.
So there is a map in the IMA that shows the sewered area of Buzzards Bay. And I believe the Mass Maritime is within that map. I'd have to double check it, Wayne, but I'm pretty sure of it. I mean, it goes down as far as, it doesn't go all the way down to Scenic Park. So like, if we wanted to add Scenic Park, and we talked about that at one point, we'd have to actually amend our intermunicipal agreement. But all Taylor's points in it, so.
Right. Now, did I also understand that you said that they are actively going out and seeking other communities to join?
Wareham.
Yeah, they well, through the coalition, had made presentations to other communities. From what I understand, what I read in the newspaper, I didn't talk to the person directly, Selectmen and Marion. He wrote an op-ed and saying
basically that they had an estimate of $20 million, because their sewer treatment facility is like on, way up inside Marion, if you know where Marion is.
Yes.
It's kind of way on the other side. So the pipe connecting them to the Wareham facility, which is over in East Wareham, would cost them about $20 million. And they only have like 1,500 users. So just economically, it didn't make sense for them as a community to go to Wareham. And they had some issues. They had some lagoons that were unlined. The coalition made it an issue because they felt it was leaching into the bay. And so they had to drain those lagoons and then reline them. So they spent, some significant money to continue on with their operation in Marion. So I think that's their bottom line. So I don't think Marion's, going to go forward on this. It's just an economic situation. They just can't afford to.
1 second. Just kind of reining in the conversation. This is kind of why I was asking if sewer commissioners were going to have a meeting to talk this article. It's like getting late, so I kind of just want to rein the conversation a little bit. Glenn had his hand raised.
Just a clarification, Wayne. So the conversation that staff has been involved in, I want you to clarify, this is staff, not the Board of Sewer Commissioners, not the Board of Selectmen. We've had conversation with staff it is the town of Bourne, the town of Wareham, the town of Marion, and a section of South Plymouth, just overhead of Bay Road. They're really kind of isolated from the Plymouth sewer system. That septage, right, those Title V systems right now leak right into Buttermilk Bay. So there is probably, I would say, a benefit to the town of Bourne to see that section of Plymouth sewered. Whether it's through, this coalition or not, that's a different story, but those are the four entities that are in the discussions.
And there was a sewer commissioners meeting with this presentation, and I'll try digging it up that everyone here can watch. It's very beneficial to listen to, and you can actually see their point of view, because I do believe, Skip, you were on that meeting, I believe. It was
I didn't call in, no, on that
Oh,
meeting.
maybe it was you. I don't know.
Hopefully.
It was very similar opinions, and you get to hear both sides of people's opinions, so I'll make sure the committee gets that. Next on my list is Parker and then Jim.
So I kind of have two questions, and I guess they sort of tie in together. The first one is, so this article, and this might be for the selectmen more than anything else, doesn't necessarily have any legal teeth, right? So it's supposed to slow down Wareham from coming in and dumping sewage, but legally it does not stop them from doing so, correct?
It's probably more symbolic.
More symbolic than anything else. Okay, and so with this kind of tying in, I agree with both of you. I think this is good. As a resident of Gray Gables, like you said, with it being in your backyard, from an ethics standpoint, will we have to abstain from voting because it technically affects? Okay.
No, it affects more than just one person.
Well, the intention of this whole thing is to be a net cleaner bay. I just wonder if the petitioners, if there's any level of cleanliness of this outflow that would make this acceptable to you. I understand you said it's kind of speculative of when they'll be able to get rid of the forever chemicals and other toxins.
Yeah, see, there's several outfalls in Buzzards, the Greater Buzzards Bay, and if you go to any of those facilities, if you go to New Bedford or Fairhaven or Dartmouth, it's what happens when you collect a lot of sewage, septage, and then, you process it and you put out, in their case, is secondary. The surrounding area where the outfalls are, the marine life is pretty much dead. There's no fish. They even have, like, Boston Harbor has, like, cameras, so you can see the actual habitat. As, a member of the Buzzards Bay Advisory Committee, we went out to look, because the Rodman plant, it's like, they put theirs like a half a mile out, and it just, bubbles up, and, you can really get an idea of what's going on there. But yeah, it just has such a dramatic negative effect on the habitat and on the fishery.
And I don't know if you're an avid fisherman, but there's thousands of avid fishermen in the town here that, you know, just love fishing the canal. They call it the big ditch. You know, they love going there. And, you know, to do something that's going to negatively affect their obsession, I would say. I mean, these guys are down there. I don't know, do you know where Bell Road is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've seen them, you know, I mean, night and day, you know, just, I mean, they just love it. And so, you know, that's pretty much what people are just concerned about the habitat. So, yeah, so if that experimental procedure, if all of a sudden they get rid of all PFAS and they get rid of all pathogens and they get rid of all the contaminants and it came out as drinking water, yeah, that'd be fine. You know, but I would still be concerned about, you know, we haven't got enough drinking water and we're just dumping it into the bay, fresh water, and changing the salinity. You know, I used to be on the Buzzards Bay Water Commissioner, he's on the Buzzards Bay Water Commissioner. We don't get the water that we want. You know, we have to request for water for Buzzards Bay, and it has to go before a board, and we either get accepted or we don't. We got rejected 5 years ago. We put in another request again. How did that work out?
It's working.
Okay, so
Not done
I'm just
yet.
saying is, it's a real issue. I mean, people think we have unlimited water, that we can just pump and distribute water, but that's not the case. There's a limited resource. There's a board that oversees, and you're allowed to pump X amount of gallons, and that's it. And so like when, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when the splash pad, they Yeah. thought they could just, I'm sorry, but Yeah, it's okay. they thought they could just turn it on and run it. Well, there was no water to run it. We didn't have the water to run it, you know? So that's a big issue. If we had unlimited water supply, you know, but we don't.
All right, so I'll give Dr. Sullivan my answer. It's a very simple answer because I happen to know that he's a sailor. And I see him out with his son sailing in December, and I'm a shell fisherman. And, you know, we both get salt spray on our face all the time. And the thought when you lick it off that it's not salt water isn't a good thought at all. And, you know, my great-granddaughter was in the water at Electric Ave when all this stuff started, and I thought, oh, my God, you know, this is wastewater. And I got, you know, and I see him, and he sees me, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. We all get salt spray on our face if we're near the water. And we all lick it off. And we all want it to taste like salt water. That's it. That's the best I can give you, Jim.
Any other questions or comments regarding this citizens petition? Seeing none. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Article 21, authorized to dispose of the old police station.
Good evening. I'm Tim King. I'm the town administrator. The town has an evacuated police station, and they haven't decided what they're going to do with it. But I think it's important for town meeting to give the Board of Selectmen the authority that if they think it's in the best interest of the town to sell it or demolish it, or find some other public or private use for it. These kind of buildings, when they're left vacant, deteriorate very quickly. So I think it's important for the town to take this action so that the Board of Selectmen can proceed with a plan for what that building can be used for or sold in the future.
That's it in a nutshell. I won't take up any more of your time.
Well, I'm personally glad to finally see this on a town meeting warrant. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding this?
In reading this, it says that the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen acting through the town administrator to dispose of the property. I think the Board of Selectmen have full authority to do that, and I think you're adding another piece in there, which I don't see as necessary, because I don't see why it has to be worded, directed to go through the town administrator. I see that that's the board's responsibility, and it's their work.
This is the language that was given to me by town council,
Well,
word for word.
I'm just
Yeah.
telling you that my opinion on this is, I think that section should be removed from that. That's my opinion.
Just not gonna argue with town council on the wording.
I will.
Oh, MJ?
I have a, I find that interesting, because we've had a number of these articles over the years, and they were not worded this way. They're worded the way the Hawks, this is a new wording for our town, and so I'm wondering what town council wrote it. So we usually say to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to lease or sell, or we could add, or otherwise dispose of the property located at 175 Main Street, Buzzards Bay, on the terms and conditions deemed by the Board of Selectmen to be in the best interest of the town, or take any other action thereto. That's the familiar language that we use, and I think that's the question, why we have a new and different language.
Do you think we can get an answer from town council regarding this, just to answer
Yeah,
the
yeah.
question?
Yeah, we
All
can.
right, so we'll get an answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Perfect. All right. The authorized to dispose of Hoxie School article was removed from the warrant. Glenn, can you just give a quick explanation about that?
Sure, simple explanation, because it's already been voted.
Yeah, back in 2017, 2018.
2019. And I think somewhere along the lines, I know the town kind of had a bad experience with the Hoxie School when it leased it out. It kind of just fell to the bottom of the pile, and I think it's time now for it to rise back up. That's what I think. Just like the police station, hopefully we'll get a positive vote. We'll work out the language here and get a positive vote, but, these are two buildings that do really need to kind of move on and find some kind of useful life for them.
Perfect. All right, and the article, which is now two different articles, Articles 10 and 11, the Next Grid Solar Project, we're deferring to the Wednesday meeting, the 27th, next week. I do believe that is a timing of negotiations. Glenn, can you?
Yes,
Confirm.
so this is the solar array up by the town DPW near the elementary school. The Board of Selectmen are still in negotiations with the solar developer. Those negotiations are gonna happen actually on Tuesday night in the executive session meeting, and will be announced at
Yeah,
the
I'll announce
Board of
them
Selectmen
afterwards.
open session. So hopefully they'll be finalized that night,
Oh, perfect.
yes.
Just a slight follow-up. I did email the chair. Ooh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I wrote that on the wrong agenda item. Sorry about that. All right, is there any public comment joint session with FinCom? Can you just come to the microphone? And just state your name and affiliation.
Thank you, and good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. My name's Corin Peterson. I'm the senior attorney with the Buzzards Bay Coalition. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Buzzards Bay Coalition, we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to the protection, restoration, and sustainable use of Buzzards Bay and its watershed, and we're supported by more than 10,000 members across the bay. And I'll be very mindful of your time, so I'll be really brief. But a couple of things came up this evening about the citizens petition that I just wanted to offer the joint committees here.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Go ahead.
This could have been discussed under the citizen petition, the fact that she's speaking under public comment. Because she could have came up at the time because because the article was being discussed and is posted.
And that could be my mistake, because when I was speaking, I only asked the committee and I only asked the Board of Selectmen.
Look, we don't have a chance to defend what she says as she says it. It was on a posted agenda.
So, give me a second to think. We don't have a chance to defend whatever you have to say. It seems like this committee will be meeting again to discuss it because we do have questions that we need answered. I apologize that you stayed this whole time. Do you mind coming to that meeting if I reach out to you? Only because I don't want to be in any violation of.
Absolutely.
I apologize.
But I
That was
did,
my
I
mistake.
did wait till it was posted as, public session, public here, so I did wait.
I do apologize.
Okay.
That was absolutely my mistake.
And all I'm offering is, the coalition's perspective.
Yes,
I don't
and-
anticipate that you will need to defend what I'm saying, I'm just offering you.
I believe you presented to the sewer commissioners
I did.
months ago. I am going to send that presentation to the members of this committee and this select board. If you think real quick, is anything you have to say not covered during that meeting?
I think we would offer important perspectives that were not covered under that meeting with respect to the citizens petition.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Could we say that we would have the 27th meeting as being a follow-up for this? Would that work in
Will
terms
we-
of your schedule for the?
Will we be ready? Will you guys be
Well,
ready
the
with?
Board of Selectmen and the Board of Sewer Commissioners are meeting on Tuesday night.
26.
26.
So if,
Can I have a point of order?
go ahead.
Can we as a board take a motion to allow her to speak? And
I
that,
don't
no.
think so. This is what this is why it's an issue. This is why I am trying not to hear you. The agenda item was already spoken. And when I posted this, I probably should have wrote joint session public comment and in parentheses. If you notice on the third agenda bullet point, it says public comment on non-agenda items. I probably should have done the same down here. Because the time to speak, again, would have been during when we were discussing that article, and again, my mistake for not asking the audience input. So I'd like to invite, I apologize again. I would like to invite you to the Wednesday meeting. If you would prefer to shoot an opinion email that I can share with the committee, and we'll discuss it again at the next Wednesday, the 27th.
7th,
Yes.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay.
I do apologize, and
That's
I'll
okay.
make sure my vice chair pokes me and reminds me to ask for public comment, because I absolutely apologize. It was my
That's all right.
mistake.
Madam Chair, could I ask this issue be put on first for next Wednesday? So that she's not here?
It depends, because if we have things that we discuss on Monday pushed off to Wednesday too, and we have town staff, I try to get town staff in and out first. So I hear you.
Okay.
I will add a note that if there's no other ones, we will put that for the first topic. Buzzards Bay. First. Perfect.
Our staffs appreciate your consideration.
No, I understand. I think I saw Dan napping when CPA was talking. Thank you, and I again, apologies.
No worries. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Oh, any other public comment? All right. The next joint meeting for special town meeting articles review is going to be Monday, the 25th. The agenda was posted this afternoon. I will be emailing the committee tomorrow, as well as an updated warrant, well, no, scratch that. The updated warrant tracker is coming out over the weekend, because I need time to work on it. As I stated, we will be meeting Wednesday, the 27th. Obviously now. My only thing, and this is where I was gonna say, Glenn, I emailed the chair of the bylaw committee to come before us to discuss the change in the bylaw, and I did not hear a response.
Oh, David Gay.
For Monday night?
No, for Wednesday at this point.
Okay.
I was gonna see if you can reach out to him and see if he responds to you. I don't know why I didn't get a response,
Okay.
but just see if he could come Wednesday evening.
Is this for the energy strike bylaw?
Or-
This is
or
for
The Bowles Landing is for landing. Miss Rich Living may be able to speak on it, Share the Short Harbor
It's sponsored by the.
bylaw, but Rich Living may have the background information for it. David Gay,
I was hang on, I was
Yeah.
going to invite him.
Yeah.
But since it's a bylaw committee article, I would like somebody from the bylaw committee here. If it's not the chair, he can send a rep.
Yep.
I do understand it is a shore and harbor, matter, but like I said, it's a,
yeah, but David Gay, it's hard, because he's a town council in his own right, so he's very hard to reach.
okay, but.
I know.
I do need a contact
Can't hurt to reach out to
person,
him, reach out to him. I
And if
can-
he
Just reach
can't
out.
come,
That's
he
right,
can send
reach out.
somebody
We don't have
else.
the answers.
Thank you.
He can tell me no, just like he can tell anybody else no.
And then we do have the 11/1 meeting. Any other questions, comments, or concerns while we're with the select board? Thank you all for coming this evening.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
This next area should just
What?
fly by fast. Minutes of previous meetings, there are none. Any updates from committee members, Rich?
No.
Town administrator comments.
You left.
Let's say we know. Let's go with no.
All right. Finance committee, no comment from me. Anybody else?
No.
All right. Next meeting and future agenda items, other than what was just discussed with the joint meetings with the select board, I anticipate no other FinCom meetings. And with that,
Move to adjourn.
second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstentions,
Don't like to say that.